Ladies and gentlemen, today we just got an absolutely massive update about the nuclear option as it relates to getting rid of the Senate filibuster. And as a little bit of a spoiler here, if you're a fan of moving along full steam ahead with the America First agenda, I think you are going to like today's video. And then, on top of that, literally right this very moment, because of his recent meeting with President Trump, Zohran Mamdani's own voters are turning on him already. And so, folks, today we have a lot to talk about. Let's get right into it. Now, as you all know, President Trump just navigated the nation out of the single longest government shutdown in all of United States history, which was, by the way, entirely manufactured by Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. But still, it's at the top of the Trump administration's agenda to nuke the Senate filibuster. And of course, what this would mean is that the number of votes needed in the Senate to pass President Trump's America First legislation would drop from 60 all the way down to 51, at which point we'd be full steam ahead. And so on that note, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this.
You call for an end to the filibuster. In the past, Leader Thune has said that it's just not happening. There aren't the votes. Mr. Secretary, do you believe that you have enough votes, that the president has enough votes to get rid of the filibuster?
Well, we will see come January 30th, because that's the point of my editorial, is to put the Senate on notice that the Democrats kept the government shut down, and Ezra Klein in the New York Times took the mask off. He said this wasn't about health care. This was about stopping totalitarianism. The Democrats haven't been able to stop President Trump in the courts. They haven't been able to stop him in the media. So they had to harm the American people. 1.5% hit to GDP, $11 billion permanent hit. They don't care. So I believe that Senate Democrats, if Senate Democrats close the government again, that Senate Republicans should immediately abrogate the filibuster. You should ask Senator Klobuchar whether she will adhere to the filibuster and whether she will close the government.
And so, folks, very clearly, not only does the Trump administration still want to nuke the Senate filibuster, but really what we just watched can only be described as a reality check. It's important to keep in mind here, in January of 2022, when Joe Biden was in the White House and when the Democrats had control of the House and the Senate, they actually desperately tried to nuke the Senate filibuster themselves. Now, ultimately, they failed because, thank God, two Democrat senators, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, got in the way and voted against it. But do you want to know what the Democrat establishment did to those two Democrat senators because they refused to go along with the party plan of nuking the filibuster? They primaried them out and then tried to replace them with two brand new senators who were even more radically progressive. That's what they did. And as if that wasn't proof enough of what the Democrats' real intentions are, take a look at this. This is a photo compilation of various Democrat senators currently sitting on the Senate, just plainly and openly discussing their plans to nuke the filibuster should they ever get control of the country again. They're not even trying to hide it. So yeah, you know what? I'm with President Trump on this one. Let's get this show on the road. Let's nuke the Senate filibuster, and then let's save the Republic. The reality is, the second the Senate Republicans decide to listen to President Trump and nuke the filibuster, we could immediately pass an entire battery of America First legislation, like national voter ID laws, for instance. In fact, President Trump just posted this on Truth Social just earlier this morning, and I quote, "We must focus all of our energy and might on election fraud." And of course, he's absolutely right. We should do that. In fact, let's just be honest here. If we had nationally sweeping voter ID and voter registration laws, this is what the country would look like in the upcoming 2028 election. The far left would be completely done for. They would never win another national election ever again. But now, folks, speaking about members of the far left winning elections, now we're going to talk about Zohran Mamdani. Because like I said, right this very moment, his own radically progressive base is already turning on him. Really, right now, they're eating themselves alive. And the reason why is because of Mamdani's recent meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office. And so, folks, now I've got something that I want all of you to take a look at. But first, I do want to say real quick that if you folks enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. But okay, take a look at this.
In that press conference with President Trump, a reporter asked you whether you believe that President Trump is in fact a fascist, a word that you've used in the past. You were about to answer, then President Trump sort of jumped in and he said, quote, "That's okay, you can just say yes. It's easier than explaining it." So, Mr. Mayor-elect, just to be very clear, do you think that President Trump is a fascist?
And after President Trump said that, I said yes. And
so you do?
And that's something that I've said in the past. I say it today. And I think what I appreciated about the conversation that I had with the president was that we were not shy about the places of disagreement, about the politics that has brought us to this moment. And we also wanted to focus on what it could look like to deliver on a shared analysis of an affordability crisis for New Yorkers.
Now, folks, this is just so weird, and I'll tell you why. For ages now, people on the far left, all of the radical progressives, just like Mamdani, have been saying that if you've got 10 people sitting at a table and one of them is an open fascist, you've actually got 10 fascists sitting at the table, meaning that fascism mustn't be tolerated or negotiated with, because if you do, then guess what? You are a fascist yourself. But here we have Mamdani breaking bread and shaking hands with the evil fascist President Trump. Very curious. But look, it actually gets even worse.
You've also said in the past that President Trump has engaged in a, quote, attack on our democracy. You've called him a despot. Do you still believe President Trump is a threat to the democracy?
Everything that I've said in the past, I continue to believe. And that's the thing that I think is important in our politics, is that we don't shy away from where we have disagreements, but we understand what it is that brings us to that table.
And so, folks, yeah, like I said, right this very moment, Mamdani's far-left radically progressive base is absolutely livid that he would even associate with the evil fascist President Trump, who, by the way, is a threat to our democracy. But you know what? Take a look at this.
I think that some of your supporters would be curious to know, you say you stand by your past statements that, yes, he's a threat to the democracy. How do you square working with someone who you still think is a threat to the democracy?
I think working for the people of New York City demands that you work with everyone and anyone.
You hear that? I guess working with fascists isn't so bad after all. Huh. Folks, really, this is just yet another reminder that the far left doesn't even believe their own crazy rhetoric. Really, it's just a bunch of performative virtue signaling theatrics. But you know what? As it relates to Mamdani's meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office, we also got yet another massive update. You see, as it would turn out, as we now know, during this meeting, President Trump pretty much put communist Mamdani back in his place. Take a look.
Did he assure you he will not send troops into New York?
He told me that he cared deeply about public safety. I said I cared deeply about the same.
But did he say he wouldn't send troops?
What I told him is that what separates New York City from anywhere else in the country is we have the NYPD. And I trust the NYPD to deliver public safety. And to me, that is something that I know that they can do, that they have done, and they will continue to do under my leadership.
So he didn't rule it out in your meeting?
I made it very clear what we wanted to do was to deliver public safety and affordability, and the NYPD would be the ones to do so.
So yeah, folks, you know what that means? That means that President Trump told Mamdani that if he feels like it, he's going to flood the city with the National Guard. That's what that means. And you know what? Good. We need to stop turning a blind eye to all of these far-left sanctuary cities that are openly operating in direct defiance of federal immigration law. If the policy of your city or your entire state, for that matter, your sanctuary state, is to harbor illegal alien invaders, then we should deploy the National Guard. Now, on that note, today we actually got yet another related report in which ICE officials have now confirmed that they're going to begin stepping up operations in New York City under Mamdani's mayoral leadership. So folks, here's what's absolutely hilarious about this entire situation. All of these radically progressive members of the far left that voted for Mamdani thinking that they were going to end up getting the communist revolution are really just going to end up getting a bunch of ICE agents and maybe a National Guard deployment. So to all of the third world communists that are out there, there's something that they should all know. You see, America First is actually non-negotiable. It is happening one way or another, and in fact, there is nothing that they can do to stop it.